Okay, so now I think we're recording now. Yes, we are recording. So anyway, so this is a recording for the fourth Friday class of Algebra 1. Just so you guys know, this is right now I'm in A period Algebra 1 class on Thursday. This was yesterday for you. And we're going to record the class so that you can get a sense for what happened. Anyway, welcome everybody, right?
Welcome.
Daphne wants to say hi.
Welcome.
Okay. Anyway, so what we're going to be doing today, just so you guys, just to get a sense for it, is we want to show you that many of the graphs that we have in math, we can have kind of a basic graph, and then we can do things to it. Like we can move it up, down, left, right. We can make it wider. We can make it narrower. And so what we're going to do today is talk about how we can take a graph, a basic graph, in this case, the absolute value graph, and change it. Move it around, make it wide, make it thin, flip it, things like that. So that's really all we're going to do today, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. But what I want to do first is I want to demonstrate this using Desmos. So for my class right now, you guys can take out your computer and go to desmos.com. Sebastian, I know your computer's dead, but if you want to come up here and run it off my charger, you can do that. Have you got a charger yet?
Why don't you charge your computer? At night.
Because otherwise you won't be able to say when it comes to class that it's dead.
Oh,
All right. Anyway, so I'm going to ask you to
Mr. Shane, can
yeah.
you use your charger, please? I like it's not dead, but I have like 8%.
I have 35 in the charger.
Oh, you're good. All right. So anyway, so so go on to you're going to go to I'm going to bring it up here is Desmos, and I guess it looks like I've used this before, and go desmos.com. If you can look at you can see the URL on the top here. Everyone, does anyone want to turn off the light in the back? I'm not sure if you do. It's like better that way. And there we go. So what we're going to do is, and I think that those people that are listening to this as a recorded version need to split your screen somehow. So go ahead and do that. And I used to be able to shrink this thing. What's going on?
Desmos.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Somehow I've got this thing fixed on the screen. But anyway, I'm going to start over. All right, one more time. All right, so, and then you go start graphing, right? So first thing it says on your sheet is to graph absolute value of x. Let me show you how to do that. You're going to click the y and then the equal sign. And absolute value, can you see where it is on the keyboard?
Mm-mm.
All right, there's a keyboard on the bottom that you just have to,
Oh, I saw.
okay, you click the little menu. Is everyone on it?
Yeah.
Did everyone find that little keyboard down there? So you can use that keyboard to get your y equals.
Just look for decimals.
1 second, let me pause this. Sorry about the pause. Anyway, yeah, we're good again. So y equals absolute value. You see the absolute value sign? It's in the lower left-hand corner.
Yes.
So go ahead and push that, and then the letter X. And there it is. That's the absolute value graph. What does it look like?
A triangle upside down.
So that was my question to you guys. Is that's the question that's on the sheet right now? Is what is the? Do this.
What does it look like?
Yeah.
Should we
What does it look like?
like
that.
this? Like that.
It looks like a V, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. It's a V. The reason why it's a V is because all the y values. Remember, the absolute value has to produce a y value that's positive, right? And only positive values for y exist above the x-axis. So that's why you have that graph. So what I'm going to do is, all right, so this is our starting graph. We call this the parent function. This is the most basic absolute value graph we can make. Now what I want you to do is go ahead and press return, on your keyboard. I don't even know if I can do that. And what I want you to do is I want you to put in another graph. And this one's going to be y equals, and what did I write on there for you? I said y equals absolute value of x minus 5. So
there you go.
y, okay, got it. Y equals absolute value of x minus 5. And so those people that are in the Friday class will have to do this on a split screen. So if you have to pause this for now and figure that out, then do it. But does everyone see what happened to the graph? Look at that.
It just started at 5.
Okay, now it moved. It moved to which direction did it go?
Faster.
It went to the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that interesting because it says x minus 5 inside the absolute value sign, right? So it's the opposite. So it moves the opposite the direction that we see inside the absolute value sign. You see where it says minus 5? Yeah, you might think that that's going to make it move to the left 5. So tell me, what would I do? What would I do to make it move to the left 3?
Oh.
What equation do you think you would?
+3.
Okay, correct. Let's go ahead and if you want to, just go ahead and erase the 5 and put +3.
I don't want to.
You want to keep them all up there? Did it work?
Add another one, right?
What's that?
So y equals.
So if I put +3, so now what we're learning right now is how to move the graph left and right. And it works the same, believe it or not, for a whole bunch of graphs like quadratics and cubics and all these other weird things that we'll study later on. So the exact same thing happens inside the parentheses, or in this case, inside the absolute value sign. Whatever number I put in there, it moves in the opposite direction. So so are you guys, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how would I move it to the right 7? It would be x what? To move it to the right 7.
Oh, -7.
Minus 7. To move it to the left 7, it would have to be x
Why is it like opposite like that?
plus 7. Well, the reason it's opposite, to be honest with you, is because what's going on inside the absolute value sign is that we're trying to reset where the 0 is for the absolute value. When there's only an x in there, the center is 0, is that at x equals 0. But what number do I need to put in for x for this one? See where it says x plus 3? What number do I need to put in for x to make it 0 again? And the answer is -3. So that's basically that -3 is moving the thing to the left 3 so that we can do our absolute value work from that perspective. And it's important to remember this too, is right? So that recognize also that inside that -3 represents the new place for the new place for that graph, right? That's where the graph moved. It's right here. It's the center of it moved there. We're going to talk about that later on. Okay, let's do something else now. Okay, let's go ahead and you can go ahead and delete that line. Let me see if I can get that to delete. All right, and what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you to write the absolute value of x. I have a tough time making this thing work.
So the value of x.
Oh, I can just go x. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to write absolute value of x, and I'm going to write, watch what happens when I write +5. +5. Now, what's the difference? What happened here that's different than what happened before? Is that +5 is not where? Yeah, it's not inside the absolute value sign. It's outside the absolute value sign. And so when the number is outside the absolute value sign, then we have the ability to move it up or down. All right? So do you see? And also notice it's +5, and it also moved up 5, right? So to move it up and down, so what do we need to do to move this the absolute value sign up and down?
Make it outside.
Make it outside that parentheses, right? Later on, it'll make a little bit more sense with why exactly that happens. What would the graph look like to do if I wanted to move it down 3 from the center?
+3. Or no, it's not opposite to -3.
It's not opposite, exactly right. So it's going to be -3. Let's go ahead and make sure that happens. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question for you, just to summarize. All right. I'm going to ask you, can you do the following? Can you make an absolute value graph go left 5 and down 2? Can you write the equation of an absolute value graph that would go left 5 and down 2?
Left 5.
Yeah, left 5 and down 2. And I'll come around and see how you did.
Whoa.
How do I do
Too
that?
many Okay, done.
What should I do?
Yeah,
How do I do that?
I did.
With your computer.
left 5 and down 2. Anyone get it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Can I see?
Yeah.
Look,
Left 5 down 2. Yes.
something's happening.
Yes.
To my computer. Hold on.
Is it being taken over?
What's this?
Left 5.
Is this
Oh,
normal?
I have no idea what's going on there.
Let me see.
No, but you can use the same letters I have, like the Y and everything else. All right.
We weren't supposed to.
What,
Yeah, I'm not.
what are you trying to do?
Okay,
I don't know why I can't like mark it.
left 5 down 2.
Wait. Something happened to my computer. Wait. I think Madison hacked it.
Okay, left 5. Yeah, that's good.
Wait, I need to show you my perfection.
Okay, so, all right. So what did you, Anquan, what did you write? So left 5, you're gonna have to do what? Plus 5,
And then -2.
Yeah.
and then you're gonna go -2.
No.
All right. So good. If you're able to do that, we can move on. Are you good?
1 minute.
Did you fix it for her?
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't fix it, you opened another
I
tab.
opened up a new tab.
Well, that kind of solves the problem anyway. All right. So, all right. So I have to.
Done.
Okay. So, all right. So now we've accomplished a couple things so far. We've gotten to we've been able to figure out how to make things move left and right, right? And for
Yeah.
left and right, we have to make sure that we do the opposite sign, right? The opposite, it's inside the parentheses. To make it move up and down, right? This is left, right. And for left and right, we have to remember that we go opposite the direction of the sign, right? And, okay, so we have 2 more things that we can do, all right? So now we know how to move it left, right, up, and down. The next 2 things we're gonna learn how to do is to make it wider, narrower, and flip it, okay? So let's go to our next, I don't know what's going on here. So now, if you look on your sheet, the next thing it asks you to do is to do the absolute value. Does everyone see what it says?
Is the next page?
Oh, I can't do this.
You can't do it?
I can do it.
Okay, so let's go. What I want you to do is go y equals 4 absolute value of x. 4 times the absolute value of x.
4 times.
And I want you to notice what happened to the sides.
Wait, y equals 4
X.
absolute value.
Something
Correct.
weird happened.
Whoa.
Oh, there.
Wait, what about the second absolute value
I
sign?
like that better. Okay,
Yeah.
what's that?
You forgot one absolute value sign.
I just put 1 absolute value sign.
Oh, you don't need 2? You don't have to if it's on the computer.
I'm. Oh, you mean the other side or something? Okay, I can just. Yeah, there. I'll just step to the right, but it's in there. Okay, so can you tell me what happened to the 4? What happened when I put a 4 in there? What happened to the sides?
It went smaller.
It got, so what we call that in mathematics is we call it a stretch. So pretend like the graph is made out of rubber and somebody took the top of it and the bottom of it and they stretched it. They pulled it really tight. what's going to happen to the sides is they're going to get steeper. So in mathematics, we're going to call that a vertical, up and down, stretch. What do you think is going to happen if I change the 4 to a 1/4? All right? So instead of having the number in front be really big, I'm going to make it really small. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So what I'm going to choose it to do is make it 1/4. So I'm going to go in parentheses. I guess I have to do it in parentheses. I'm going to go.
It's really weird, like this.
I'm going to go 1 divided by 4. What did it look like?
Like the opposite of what we did.
All right. So I did mine in parentheses. You guys you probably don't have to, but so here's 1/4 absolute value of x. And what we call that is a shrink. Okay, what do I call that again? Okay, so if the number before the absolute value sign is less than 1, what happens is we get a shrink. Can you think of another shrink? How about
Yes.
1/3?
5x.
1/2. What do you think? How do you think 1/2 would compare to 1/4? By the way,
1/2 would be like. Half.
would it be more? Would it be more steep than this or less?
This. It'd be more like this.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and put the 2 in there.
No, it's gonna be more like this.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a 2 in there. It's a little steeper, right?
Yeah.
Because it's closer to 0. So the smaller the number is, the more it shrunk. The more it shrinks. The bigger the number is, the more it stretches. Right? Think of a big number to stretch it with, like
100.
like 100. Oh wow.
Wow.
I think that's gonna look like that's gonna look like a line. 100.
99.
How about 10? 10's pretty steep.
10.
See 10?
That's 10.
Yeah.
I wanna do 100.
So-
this is like a straight line almost.
All right. Now there's one last thing to do here. All right. And did I tell you I was going to show you how to flip it?
I did 100.
You did 100.
It's
It
not
looks
so
like it
straight
just
now.
looks like a line, right?
No.
No.
Can I see? There's like a.
It's almost basically.
Yeah, it's
Did you
almost.
hear?
It's almost a straight line. Okay, so we got the difference between a stretch and a stretch and a shrink. So what do I do to make a shrink? I put what kind of a number in front of the absolute value sign?
They're small.
A number, yeah, number less than 0. I mean, sorry, not less than 0. Less than 1. All right, it's a small number. And then to make it stretch, I make a number that's really, really big. Good. Now the only thing that I haven't showed you how to do yet is flip it. So and this is the easiest thing. Just put a negative sign in front of the 10, or whatever. If I put a negative sign in front, watch what happens. It flips. Right. Someone in my other class, in my algebra 2 class, said, okay, then and you hit the negative sign again, it goes back up. Why? What's negative, negative?
It's positive.
Positive.
Positive. What's negative, negative, negative?
Positive.
Negative.
So every time you hit negative, it flips, right? Okay. So anyway, yeah, right. It's because they have nothing better to do than to hit that negative sign all day. But anyway, so the idea is that if I hit
You
it.
don't have to put y equals. It still works.
Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can finish this. Wait, what did you say? What did you say?
You know how you put y equals and x something something? You don't have to put y equals. It still works.
Okay. Oh, you could just write. Oh, I didn't know that. All right, but anyway, so anyway, where we are right now is let me see if I can find my.
What's this? Go away.
Okay, so back to where we were, except that I've lost everything now. Okay, but by this point, I would
Does anyone know
imagine
what
that those
happened to my
people
sheet?
that
my sheet.
what?
Whoa, that was you. That's you.
Oh, that's so weird. Let me pause.
I think you recorded.
Okay. Oh wow. Anyway, so if you look at the first page of that sheet, hopefully we've got the basics down. To move it left or right, we put a number inside the absolute value sign, right? And once we do that, oh guys, I'm so sorry that I didn't give you a break to be able to get some water. Wow. I guess 10 minutes wasn't long enough. But anyway, just to review really quickly, looking at your front sheet, everybody, right? We learned how to move the graph left and right. Again, how do I do that? Where does the number go to move it left or right?
In the
inside.
absolute
On the outside-
Inside the absolute value sign, correct. To move it up and down, the number needs to go where?
Outside of the.
Outside the absolute value sign, right? And to flip it, what do we do?
Put a negative.
Negative.
Put a negative sign in front of the absolute value sign. To stretch it,
Oh,
Make
put
and put the
a
different numbers in
number,
X.
like a big number.
big number in front of the absolute value sign. To shrink it,
Or like us.
Below 1.
yeah, between 0 and 1. Between 0, yeah, okay, so good. So basically we have the ability to do pretty much anything to those graphs, okay? So let's go to, let me go to the next page. And what I want you to do is use your newfound knowledge to be able to figure out which of these graphs is connected to which graph. And what I'd like you to do is if you could pair up to do that. I know some of you are, if this is a Friday class, I'm sure some of you are in different places on this, but please feel free to converse with your partners. And if your substitute gets upset with you, you can have them play this back so that they know. But let's look at A, and let's see if we can figure out from just looking at it which graph it might be. So everyone looking at A? Everyone see A?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the two things that are going on with this graph? We're looking for a graph that did what?
It's going to the right.
Needs to go
It
down.
should go to the right. How many?
And it's also going down.
Okay, so it should go to the right, move to the right 2, right? And then the minus sign should flip it, right?
D.
So which graph looks like it moved to the left, to the right 2 and was flipped?
D.
It's D, correct.
I said D. You gotta tell me what I said.
All right. So can you guys take a moment? I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna pause this on the video, and I'd like you guys to take a moment and see if you can't match those graphs with the correct letter. So we've already done A, and the letter is D, and so let's go ahead to move on to B, C, D, E, and F, and see if you can use your newfound knowledge to identify the graph that matches.
So, how do I...
All right, so let's can you guys let's go ahead and start at the beginning. The first one is going to be we already figured out was D, right?
Yeah.
So A was D. For B, we decided that was it was going to the right 2 and up 2, and that looks like C. And how about letter C? What does it match
E.
up with?
Oh no.
C is
E.
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 Okay, so
C is B.
yeah, what's happening with that one is that the plus sign does what? This plus 2 means left 2, down 2, and flip it.
That's, I mean,
And that's E, right?
Yeah.
And D is what's happening? What's the transformation here?
F.
What happens to the graph? It's going to go
Down
2 and
to the right.
to the right 2. So a graph that is to the down 2 and to the right 2 looks like what?
Like F.
It looks like F, right? Trickier one. And then E. What's the 2 in the front going to do?
Make it skinny.
It's going to make it skinnier, right? Skinny, or which we call stretch. So it's going to be moved to the right 2 and then stretched. Which one is that? Looks like A, right? And then we have a flip, a 2 left and 2 up and a flip. And that's going to be which one?
I just noticed something. B.
It's going to be B, right? All right, good job. Yes, what did you say?
No, I just noticed something.
You-
It's not about this.
Okay, anyway.
Wow.
So anyway, it says right here on your sheet. Question is, it says, what do these little values do, right? So let's just like really quickly summarize. What happens when A changes? Stretch or shrink, right? Stretch or shrink. What does H do?
Moves it right to left.
Right, moves left to right, opposite the sign, right? Moves left or right, opposite the sign.
And K.
And what's it? Yeah.
Like
And K does what?
up or down.
Up or down. All right, perfect. It says, all right, so let's take a look at this one, see if we can figure this one out. It says, write an equation of an absolute value function whose graph is shown. So if you look at that graph, does it look like it's been stretched?
No.
No. If it's like a 90-degree angle, it's not going to be stretched. But let's see if we can figure out what these values are going to be. So y equals absolute value of x, you know, and then we have plus or minus something, right? So we need these two numbers here. What things are gonna what things happen to this graph?
+2.
Okay, it's gonna be actually I think it looks like 1.
That's one. Oh.
Oh yeah, +1.
Is a +1 that moves it to what does that do for it? That moves it to the left one,
Right. Oh.
and now we have to move it up 1, right?
So
Oh.
+1.
So +1 on the outside too, and it got flipped.
+1 -1.
I just put a minus sign in front here.
Oh.
All right,
Oh.
does that make sense?
Yes.
Kinda, yeah.
No idea. What's that?
No, I understand.
You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we don't need the computer, but one of the things that I want you to notice is this, and this is going to be helpful when we graph these by hand. What I want you to notice is where did the bottom of the V move in the x direction? You see how it moves to the left one, right? So we're going to focus on this number here when we're trying to figure out what values for x to use. Usually what we want to do is use that value for x where it was shifted to, and then maybe 2 points on either side of that. So if I were to try to find points for this graph to graph it, I'm going to do the following. And I'll do more of these in a moment. So here's x and here's y. The middle of the graph is going to be where? It's going to be at -1. Does everyone understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the middle of the graph is going to be -1. So I'm going to put a -1 down here. And then I'm going to move, I'm going to go -2, -3 up. And then I'm going to go 0, 1 down. So what I do is this. When I'm trying to graph it by hand, what I want to do is find the middle of the graph. And I want to put the x value of the middle of the graph in the middle of my table. Does everyone understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll show you why that's going to be helpful later, okay? So let's go ahead and move to the next page.
I did.
What's that? You already did? Okay.
You changed it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little chart. This is how we're going to graph. And we're going to choose, and we're going to graph 5 points. Now, can anyone tell me where is the center of this graph?
In the middle.
It's at 0, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 0 in the middle of my chart, because I'm going to do 5 points. And I'm going to go -1, -2 up, and then 1, 2 down. Okay? So I'm just going to always, when I'm graphing these by hand, I'm going to always choose the middle of the graph. All right? And I know the middle if I look inside the absolute value signs.
Then -2 plus.
Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in these values, right? So if I plug in absolute value of -2, if I put a -2 and find inside this g of x, what does it become?
Absolute value of -2 plus 3.
Yeah, what is that?
5.
It is 5. I'm going to write g of x instead of y here, but it's going to be 5. All right? So if you need to plug them in, Sebastian, sit up. If you want to plug them in and, on your own, Sebastian.
I think he's sleeping. He's sleeping.
Sebastian. Okay, so let's put -1 inside, and it's going to be 4. Absolute value of 0 plus 3 is?
Oh, 0 is 3.
3. Now, absolute value of 1 plus 3.
2.
Did you say 4?
4.
Oh, I thought it was 5 or 3.
And then the next one's going to be 5. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph these points. So you got 0, 3. It's a lot easier to do this with Desmos, isn't it? And then you've got I'm sorry, negative 2, 5. I should have started with that one. Negative 2, 5. Negative 1, 4, 0, 3. You can see the graph now, right? And now we just connect the dots. Remember that this graph goes on forever to the left and to the right.
I like
Okay?
this one.
Wow.
You guys okay with this?
Yeah.
All right, now for the next one, when we draw, this is where we have to check for the new center, all right? Where's the center of the graph? Where's the bottom of the V gonna be now? For B, for graph B. So do you see how the graph is moving? It's gonna move to the right too, correct?
So it's
So what I want to do is pick 2 as my center number, all right? Because that's where the V is moving. It's moving to the right too. So I'm just going to put 2. 2 is going to be the middle of the graph. And so what numbers are going to go up? Go smaller. It doesn't. You don't have to. 1 and then
0.
0.
And then
And then down is going to be 3 and then 4. Okay. So as long as we do that, it's going to make the graphing a lot easier. That's all I'm going to say. All right? So always look inside the graph to figure out what value for x we're going to put in the middle. All right? And let's go ahead and see if we can't plug in some values. 0 minus 2 is,
2
and an absolute value of minus 2 is
plus
plus 2. Correct. 1 minus 2 is minus 1. And the absolute value of minus 1 is 1.
then 0.
0.
Then 1.
Yeah.
Then
Do you notice it? Yeah. It does that.
Oh, so kinda
If
like
you
you
do
start-
if you get the right center, it'll always do the same thing. It'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. Right? Okay. So let's go and let's graph it. 0, 2. I mean 2, 0. Oh, I'm sorry. 0, 2. It was 0, 2. Right, and then 1, 1, 2, 0, 3, 1, and then that, right?
Yeah.
So how are we doing so far?
good.
Okay, so I think that the key thing is making sure that you put the right value in the center of your table. What's going to be the center of this table here? This is yours to graph. Look inside the absolute value sign. There's nothing there, right?
So
one.
nothing.
So 0 is
0 is going to be your center. Yeah,
then
0 is going to be your
minus
center.
1, minus 2, and 2.
Minus. Turn it off. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this so that those people that are listening to the recording can do this themselves. So, all right, pause, take a moment, and try to graph these two. Okay, so anyway, this is what we should have gotten for our graphs. I forgot to put h of x here. Those are the same. That's the same as y, right? N of x. So just trying to get used to naming these functions different names. The key thing, again, for graph 2 is that we needed to make sure that the center was -4. We got the -4 by seeing this +4 inside here and knowing that that moves the graph to the left 4, right? So to the left 4 is -4, and that's why we chose that -4 to be at the center of the graph. So anyway, good stuff. Let's. I think that is that the rest of. Are we done with that page?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're done with that page. Okay, go to the next page, and so now we have some stretches and stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's graph this number 2. Graph A. So let's go ahead and set up our little table again. And again, we're going to be looking for 5 points. That's kind of the standard Algebra 2 number of points we typically use. So x and q of x. The center on this one is?
0.
It is 0. Good, Anquan. So you got -1, -2, 1, 2. Got it. And so did anyone see that the first one is going to be
4.
4? Yeah.
Wait, why is that -4?
It's not -4. It should be a positive 4.
Okay.
What did I? Yeah. And so the next one, it says absolute value of -1 times 2 is just going to be 2. 0 times 2 is,
0.
and then again we get the 2, 4. That repeats as long as we did those first 3 right, we're good. So let's go -2, 4. -1, 2. 0, 0. Do you guys see the stretch?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. The sides are steeper, right?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to this? Is everyone caught up with this?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's do this next one. This next one should be a what? 2 things happen with this next one.
The center is 0,
So
right?
it's still 0.
Yep. Center's still 0, so we got the 0 down here. -1, -2, 1 and 2. And on this one, notice that there's a 1/2 in front. What is that going to do? What's the word for that? Not stretch, but shrink, right? And what is that negative sign going to do? Do you remember what the negative sign did in the front?
Makes it go down.
Flips it, yeah. So let's watch, let's see if it works. So plug in, let's plug in -2. So the absolute value of -2 is just 2. 2 times -1/2. What is 1/2 of 2 is?
1.
So it becomes -1. Now, if you need to do that off to the side, just do that, all right? If you don't want to do it in your head, I don't blame you. So the next one, if I put -1 inside the absolute value sign,
Minus 0.
so it's going to be 1/2, -1/2 times 1.
Minus 0.5.
0.5, just -1/2, right? I put a 0 in there, and I'm going to get a 0. And what do you think the next 2 numbers are going to be?
Positive. Oh, negative.
0.5.
-1/2 and -1. Right? They just repeat.
They just repeat.
Yeah. Yes, for this graph.
Because they all.
Yeah. So let's go -2, -1. And then we've got -1, 1/2. So I wish my graph was a little bigger, but you're just going to stick it right in the middle here. 0, 0. 1, 1/2. 2, 1. So do you see how it did get shrunk a little bit? Right? Questions on that?
No.
I could have been a little less messy, but let's look at the next 2 graphs coming up. See if you can't do those on your own. I'm going to pause the video for now,
Next 2.
and let's see if you guys can figure out how to graph those 2. All right? What does it look like? Do we have another page?
Yeah, we have 1 more problem.
Okay, so we have one more problem. Okay, so we have one more problem to do. But anyway, let's take a look at these 2 graphs. All right, just make sure that the numbers match. Again, we get a flip and a stretch for number 3, and so looks right. Number 4 is really hard to graph, but the y values were 1/2, 1/4, 0, 1/4, 1/2. Again, just approximate it as best you can, and then that's it. Let's go to the last part. So the last part, it's a huge graph, right? So it says describe the transformations of the graph compared to f of x equals x. So what are the transformations of the graph? There's something that there's 4 things that happen. See if you can tell me the 4 things that happen. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tell me looking at this equation right here. Guys see that? Can anyone tell me by looking just at the equation what things are happening to it, to the basic graph?
Okay, so it's moving to the right? No. the
Yeah,
left.
it moves to the right, you're right.
And then it also
How far?
3. 1.
1.
Yeah, 1, my bad.
So right,
It's
1.
going-
And what is the 3 doing?
Moving up.
Up 3?
Isn't it opposite? So it's down.
No, it's not opposite on the
Oh,
outside.
yeah.
Yeah, the only one that's opposite on the inside the parentheses. So it's going to go up 3. How about the number in front? What's that going to
That's
do?
making it
Up or down.
That's making it like spread.
It's
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Stretch. So we're going to stretch 2. And then what does the negative sign do? Flip it.
Flip it.
Right? So let's go ahead and let's get some points here. Can anyone tell me the center point? Look inside. You have to look inside the absolute value sign to find the center.
-1.
Not -1.
1.
It's going to be +1, right? It's basically where did the graph move left or right? So it moves to the left. It moves to the right 1. So that's where the center of the graph is now, right?
Yeah.
It moved to the right 1. So we'll use that as a center point, and then we're going to go down 0, -1, and then 2, and then 3. So that just sets us up so that the graph, so that we make sure that we get those 5 points of the graph, 2 on either side of that bottom part. So let's go ahead. This is going to be a nightmare plugging this in, isn't it? Let's see how we do. So for -1, let's do it. -1 and -1 in the absolute value sign makes -2. The absolute value of -2 is
2.
2. 2 times -2 is -4. -4 plus 3 is -1. Oh my God. All right, let's try the next one. 0. We're going to plug in 0. So 0 minus 1. -1. The absolute value is 1. 1 times -2. -2 plus 3. 1. Now we're going to put a 1 in there. So 1 minus 1 is 0 times -2 is,
0.
and then we have so we're left with plus 3 is. Okay, now we don't actually have to do the next 2. What are they? 1 and -2, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can graph it. So basically, the idea is find the center, and then create the other x values, make the points, and then graph it. So so it's going to be -1, -2. Is that right?
Yeah. No, -1, -1.
Oh, -1, -1, right. 0, 1. 1, 3. 2, 1. 3, -2. Does it look like an absolute value graph?
Yeah.
Oh, -1 it is. I'm sorry. I wrote that wrong. Right? Alrighty. Now I got it down. I think we got it. Any...
We take a 5-minute break.
And yeah, I guess I'm going to have you guys take a small break. But is everyone... Okay, everyone's got this graph done?
Yeah.
All right. And so we know everything we need to know. Back. You awake? All right. So let's I'm going to pause this now. Actually, that was the last part, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, everyone, we're done. So at this point, we're going to start your homework. And, hopefully, if you work together, you guys can get this thing done before the end of the day. Take care, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.